Okay, let's take a brief look at the central and pivotal role of mercury in the Magnum Opus. When alchemical treatises speak of mercury or mercurial water, they are referring to the menstruum and matrix of the cosmos, the undifferentiated first matter, comprised of both the hot, dry, and active masculine principle and the moist, cold, and receptive feminine principle. Both are expressed exoterically under the rubric of elemental sulfur and argent vive. This paradoxical duality defines the differentiating aspect of the prima materia, but it can also be seen during painstaking processes carried out in the alembic and in the end result, which is the ultima materia. Given that mercury was the only known substance which demonstrated an inherent talent for solvent coagular, meaning to dissolve and coagulate or separate and join together, by amalgamating other metals, it came to be seen as the rebus or hermaphrodite, as well as a symbol for alchemy in its entirety. Mercury's numinous and animating spirit was protean. It couldn't be seen or touched, yet it pervaded elementary processes which unraveled through a twofold struggle between philosophical sulfur and argent vive. On one hand, it was the vitriol, the poison or the vinegar that killed the plant mineral or metal in the alembic and reduced it to a putrefying mass, and on the other, it was the electrical spark which spewed forth the dead residue or ashes and resurrected them anew. If anything, the mercurial nature was a living contradiction, akin to an African lioness mothering a lamb, or an atom being in two places at the same time. The she-man or he-woman couldn't quite make up its mind about what it wanted to be, what its name was, or for how long it wished to assume the intended role for in that matter. It would show up during chemical operations as a duplicitous male trickster that released poisons and dissolved substances one minute, and as a faithful female servant who contrived elixirs and coagulated substances the next. Unlike everything else on the planet, Mercury had no stabilizing form, weight, or temperature. It reasoned through impulse and acted covertly. The early alchemists never ascribed Mercury to a particular stage of the alchemical opus, because it was the formative force behind the whole work, mediating an entire process which consisted of repeated separations and coagulations between sulfur and argent vive, sol and luna. The degree of purity attained was shown through each new marriage, or conjunctionis, of these two elements. Pictorial representations of these conjunctions reveal in chronological and ascending order the couplings of hen and cock, a dog and bitch, a red man and a white woman, and finally the red king and the white queen. This dual struggle occurred within a threefold division. In this, the earliest known model of alchemical transmutation, transformation and exaltation of the prima materia, the base substance, into ultima materia, preparation of gold or the philosopher's stone, was marked by four distinct phases of coloration that served as exoteric markers of a reduction process instigated by the laws of cosmic sympathy and antipathy. Thus, the ultima materia was conferred form only after having undergone putrefaction through melanosis or nigredo, bleaching through leucosis or albedo, yellowing through xanthosis or citrinitas, and finally reddening through iosis or rubedo. Purple sometimes took the place of red in the last of these stages, hinting at the royal and spiritual scheme bubbling directly beneath the process, which at first appeared to be nothing more than a transcription of the coloration and purification of metals. In alchemical literature, melanosis was symbolized by a black raven, leucosis by a white dove, xanthosis by a yellow flower, and iosis by a red dragon or phoenix. Both are recurring chemical marriages between philosophical sulfur and argent vive, and the threefold colored divisions were underpinned by a sevenfold schema based on the planetary powers and their constituent metals. The Saturnine, jovial, and lunar forces lunarized the base matter by initiating chemical processes such as calcination, solution, and putrefaction, which brought about nigredo and albedo in the sealed vessel. Many alchemical treatises mention an intermediary stage known as cauda pavonis, or the peacock's tail, between nigredo and albedo, in which the decomposing matter in the glass comes back to life by forming an iridescent skin that resembles the iridescent blues and greens of a male peacock's tail feathers. In any case, successful completion of this stage and the albedo bestowed upon the alchemist the gift of the white stone, the power of healing and of transmuting base matter like lead or mercury into silver. Successive operations were then carried out by Venusian, Martian and solar forces, which solarized the just formed white stone through chemical reduction, sublimation, coagulation, and fermentation. These subsequent reactions in the sealed vessel or glass brought about citrinitas and rubido, culminating in the synthesis of a glittering red powder of significant weight known as the red stone. This was the ultima materia, or philosopher's stone, with the power to transmute base metals to gold and impart immortality. The creation of the white stone under the aegis of the first three planetary powers comprised what alchemists termed the lesser work, and the creation of the red stone under the aegis of the last three, the greater work, respectively. There can be no doubt that much of the Magnum Opus, its stages, and the colours produced were inspired by the mutational aptitude and miraculous properties of mercury, or quicksilver. The Chinese, the Indians, and the ancient Egyptians were all intimately acquainted with the glistening red sulfide ore of mercury called cinnabar, as well as its experiential methods of reduction from the earliest of times. The purified mercury could be used to extract gold from auriferous rocks or gold-containing quartz by cooking the two together in a stone vessel. Once all the gold was leached out, the entire amalgam was then squeezed through a leather apparatus and distilled to exorcise any residue of mercury. If mercury could liberate the eternal metal, then it made perfect sense that philosophical mercury, its idealized form, was the undisputed mother of the ultima materia, spiritual gold, or the philosopher's stone. What's more is that when mercury was heated in an alembic, it produced a reddish-orange precipitate that resembled its primitive and unrefined state as cinnabar. In former times, there was no chemical analysis able to identify or differentiate between mercuric sulfide and mercuric oxide, and their quasi-characteristics were convincing enough to seduce the early alchemists into believing that the two were one and the same substance. For anyone whose experience of reality was precariously hinged upon this solely qualitative vision, it would appear that the metal recovered its original Adamic state after suffering acute passions and agonies, an empirical fact which added significant weight to the alchemo-mystical conviction that each virgin soul came from the Empyrean as an extension of God and would eventually return there. Interestingly, the extraction of mercury or quicksilver from cinnabar and its subsequent oxidization through heating was a favorite procedure of medieval alchemists whose primary concern was to perpetuate the credibility of their royal art. Some of mercury's other distinctive reactions motivated specific ideas and symbols. For instance, heating an amalgam of salt and mercuric oxide produced mercury chloride, or corrosive sublimate, a molecular compound which appeared on the upper echelons of the alembic in the form of bleached white crystals and proceeded to grow downward. This was sublimation, the stage between citrinitas and rubido, but it was also material proof of the ethereal mercurial power that evoked the violent reactions necessary to raise the vibrations and precipitate the chromatic red of rubido. Moreover, when it was heated together with sulfur, it produced red sulfide ore, cinnabar. The first to launch a critical inquiry into metallic properties of natural mercury, such as the just mentioned, were the 8th century Arabian alchemists, particularly Jabir Hayyan, from whom alchemy inherited the philosophical sulfur-mercury theory. For that reason, we can be more than certain that this dualistic conception of the cosmos was based entirely upon crude observations made in a laboratory. Not surprisingly, we also see the inheritance of mercurial properties in the ultima materia, gold or the philosopher's stone. Natural mercury tends to be quite dense and demands storage in either stone or iron bottles, given its highly reactive and volatile state. Glass, for instance, is unsuitable because it would break and all metals, save for iron, would dissolve. By the same token, the philosopher's stone is described as a heavy red powder, or heavy liquid, when it's the elixir of life, that could vanish into thin air or diffuse through its retort or vial if the hermetic fires are not regulated or if alchemical operations are carried out too far. Sounds a bit like mercury, doesn't it? Having said that, that's the end of today's lesson, and I will see you next time.